Hello everyone, DM Gashbad here. We're about halfway through our Warhammer Fantasy Battles 8th edition Path to Glory campaign, and it occurs to me that I've kind of gotten away from the modeling and painting aspect of it. I started off doing a bit of that, and then I just got caught up with the gameplay and I haven't come back to it. So we're going to just have a brief recap of what I've been doing in the first 3 rounds. So in the first round, the only model that we added to the warband was Dunschlitz the Minotaur here. As you can see, he's a classic GW metal miniature that I picked up off of eBay, but I did convert a couple of things. A couple of people have pointed out some stuff, and I want to answer that. So the first thing is the cape. The Beast of Chaos army that I'm going to eventually make, ideally, is a Beauty and the Beastman theme. So I want these guys to have the ragged red capes that the Beast has in that movie. And so what I did was I took a plastic banner, I believe from the Black Orcs, the plastic Black Orc sprue, and I chopped it up and cut it down and glued it onto his back, added a little green stuff to make it blend in with his shoulders, and then painted it red. So yeah, that's how I do all the capes for my Minotaur models. You can see those on the Warhammer Quest videos and that kind of thing. The other thing that people asked about is because it is a different army than the Warriors of Chaos, they have a slightly different basing scheme. I use these fall leaves on the bottom. That's just basil. After I've put on the sand for the base, I then put on a little more glue and sprinkle on some basil and some piles and painted up oranges and yellows and reds. And that's how I do those bases. So there, that's Dunschlitz the Minotaur. After the second round, the only models that I added to the warband were these guys, the marinated meat shields, and they're pretty straightforward. They're just the GW plastic Chaos Marauders, and I built them pretty straight. The only real difference is that instead of using the shields that came with that set, I'm using these really old Chaos plastic shields from way back in the day. They're the old shields that had a little hole in them, so when you attached them to the metal models, they kind of stuck into the little tabs on the model's arms. So when I went to make these guys, I had to use a little bit of green stuff to cover those up. And the reason I'm using these shields is because they kind of have the general shape of steaks, and they're the meat shields. So I literally wanted them to have shields that looked like meat. And so just painted them red and added the little dab of fat marbling down the center, kind of like you see on the cartoon steaks. Anyway, that's the idea with them. The only real difference with these guys is this model right here, who is a Warcry Spire Tyrant. Really cool models in there. I wanted to add a female Marauder model, partially because I was doing the Warcry campaign, the Rat Hunters campaign, and it was being led by the Dark Oath War Queen, and I wanted to add some more female models to her warband. Just, kind of make it like a girls' night out. Anyway, because her arm was attached to the shield, I couldn't swap that out very easily, so I just used the shield that she came with and painted it red and ivory. Anyway, it was kind of a nice model. I do like that one. But yeah, that's the marinated meat shields. So we're almost all caught up now. We're to the end of round 3. And at the end of round 3, I picked up 2 models. I picked up a Bloodletter and I picked up a Spawn. And so I'm sure by now you've noticed what's the deal with this ghost Bloodletter that I've got sitting here. And, well, okay, so this didn't totally work. Obviously, this is just a regular current range plastic Bloodletter on a square base. But I have a particular idea in mind for my Khorne Demon army. I want these guys to be the ones that are in charge of fulfilling Khorne's promises. Any oaths or arrangements or anytime he makes a deal with the other gods, these are the ones that are in charge of enforcing the things that Khorne has promised to do. This comes back from the old Realm of Chaos books way back in the day. There was this aspect just tucked into the middle of these gigantic, weird books that there are positive aspects to the Chaos gods. Now, for Khorne, for example, he exemplifies courage and bravery and being honest and forthright in keeping his promises. And so I always like the idea of having a demon army that emphasizes some of these more positive, relatively, aspects of their personality. So this was going to be my demon army. The bloodletters here I think I'm going to call the Oathbound, and as part of that I wanted to have a more knightly feel to them. I even thought about carving off their face and adding knight visors to them, and I may do that at one point, but I didn't do it for this first model here. But the first thing that I wanted to do is I wanted to move away from the red color, and I wanted to give them a real shining knight steel look. Partially because I wanted it to resemble heavy metal album covers where they got this heavy use of this stylized chrome. So, depending on which way you look at this, it does seem to work. Like, I really do like the back. If you're curious, I followed Sarastro's painting guide for the Marvel Crisis Protocol Ultron model. I had done this method before on my Silver Surfer model for the Marvel Universe miniature game, and I think in general it turned out pretty good. So I was going to try it large scale with a unit of bloodletters. The problem is I didn't exactly nail it. The idea is that the top areas reflect the sky, so they're going to be blue, it transitions to a white kind of at the midpoint, and then it transitions to a darker color that reflects the ground. So when you look at it from the side, I think it looks okay. I think it looks pretty good. Obviously, I still need some practice with this kind of thing. But the issue is that the way that this head is, it's a very large, elongated, flat head at this angle. So in my mind, it's mostly going to reflect blue. So when I put it down on the table, it just looks like a blue model because that's all you see. All you see is the head. So you're thinking, well, what is this? Is this a ghost? Is he made out of ice? Why is he, this whitish blue? So what I'm going to have to do, I think, is when I go to make more of these, I'm going to try and bring up the darks a little bit higher. I'm going to make the cutoff point where I transition from the light color to the dark color. I'm going to bring it up higher so it reflects more dark. And I think that's going to make it a little bit more heavy metal, a little bit more, more that album cover look, and also just get away from the idea that it's just like this big blob of blue sitting on top of the model. But what I'm not going to do is I'm not going to repaint him, because that's one of the philosophies of my army collecting and painting thing. I never repaint anything. If you repaint stuff, sometimes you can just get stuck and you can go over and over the same model. You're never happy with it and you don't move forward. So I'm gonna have him, if I decide that I don't like him, I'll stick him in the back rank where no one really has to see him, and I'll just paint more of them and hopefully get better that way. Worst case scenario, if you have something that you really don't like, just get another of the same type and paint that. Then you have two of them. You don't feel like you're going backwards. So anyway, that's the Oathbound. And now we're finally getting to the model that I think you guys have been waiting for, this big thing at the back, my Chaos Spawn. So here he is. I'm naming this guy Dr. Heineken's Monster. So as you can probably tell, he's based on the Korgorath model that you got with the first Age of Sigmar starter box. I'm slowly going to move through those models. I'm going to convert them into things that can be used for Warhammer Fantasy. I'm slowly working away at that. Anyway, he's gigantic. I didn't realize how big this model was until I put him next to some of the other models. He just barely fits on the standard spawn base of 40 mil by 40 mil. You can see I kind of had to clip off the rock that he was standing on and sculpt a little ledge that he tucks in on, point him sideways. But he does fit, if just barely. Jeez, what a goofy thing. Yeah, there's a lot of details here. It took me a really long time. The irony is, I had just painted a Chaos Spawn for use in the Zombicide series that I've been doing. I could have been done with this warband like a week ago if I had just used that guy instead. The thing with that model was that it really didn't scream Khorne to me. And you don't say Khorne, you have to scream it. So I had this guy in mind for a Chaos Spawn for a long time, and so I finally went and did it. Now, there weren't a whole lot of conversions that I had to do. He did have, see this little claw thing? I was never really a big fan of those. He had another one sticking out of his shoulder. I just removed that. Otherwise, he's pretty much the model as he comes from the thing, except for I wanted to give him the equivalent of a beer helmet, because this is the Louts of Chaos. We're all a bunch of boozy degenerates, and so I thought that that was appropriate for him. So what I did, so this is the Chaos medieval version of a beer helmet, is I took, well, this is a plastic barrel, this is a metal one, and so I dremeled out a big section of his back and just stuck on these two barrels, presumably full of mead or ale or something. I had to use a little green stuff to sort of stick it in there. He doesn't have to have straps or anything. He can just meld it straight into his flesh. That's fine. And then I went and attached these tendrils, these gross tubes from his mouth to the tops of the barrels. And these are actual spawn models. So the old metal spawn that came with all the weird arms and tails and legs, I mean the really old ones that are kind of low down on the ground. Anyway, I took two of the club-like tails from those models, clipped off the tails, bent them around, attached them to his mouth, used a little green stuff to clean up the connection points at the barrels and into his mouth. And so there you have this juiced up monstrosity that's always going to be perpetually drunk and angry when he goes into battle. This is such a strange model. I mean, I get like the big claw skull hand and the tentacles on the other, the mouth with the blade coming on it, all that, yeah, all that makes sense to me. But what a weird face. I never really understood what was going on there. He's got like a jaw and like a tiny skull inside there, surrounded by like a bone Khorne symbol. So like, is that his head way in there? Hey, I'm not gonna tell the Chaos Gods how to do their job. Whatever works for them, works for them. Anyway, I'm really excited about that guy. He's gonna stand on the field. He's kind of terrible. I don't think he'll do really well on the tabletop. He's not particularly better than any of the other models, but hopefully him being so large and weird looking, he'll draw a lot of attention and maybe earn his keep that way. But there you have it. You're all caught up. The next round of Path to Glory should come relatively soon. We haven't scheduled it, but everything's painted, so we're ready to go. Let me know if you have any questions, observations, or concerns about any of this, and hopefully I'll see you on the next one.